Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends once again to the MOOC module on handling large scale unit level data with STATA. This is our week number 1 where we have been trying to understand the unit level data. So, therefore, the module is named as familiarization with unit level data. And in fact, this is our third lecture. In the first 2 lectures we have already introduced you regarding the data and its history behind data, and also we discuss the different forms of unit level data in the very introduction part. Now we are unfolding with the core data sets. We are trying to explain you the large scale unit level data which are very famous in the world as well as for the researchers in the Indian context. And so, this is our lecture number 3rd where we are trying to understand national sample survey data as developed by NSSO. We have already introduced this symbol, but once again this is the organization. Now, there are also some changes due to the change of the government. The organization name has been changed to office, so we will discuss right now. Now, NSS, as I already discussed, is popularly known as used to be known as NSSO, but now it is renamed as National Sample Survey Office. So, this is an organization under the Ministry of Statistics and Government of India. So, this is in fact the largest survey organization, as I said, in India, conducting regular socio-economic surveys since 1950. So, because of its size, NSS is able to actually survey the data over 1 lakh households in India for the main subject of inquiry in a particular year. So, now you imagine if the number of households are exceeding 1 lakh, this actually captures many information. So, it is catering to the large genesis and where many interpretation could be made. Now, let us understand a bit on the constitution of NSS over time. Since it is so famous, we must be having some interest on the history behind NSS. Now, looking back to the earlier periods, especially 1862, the first significant development occurred in the pre-independence era with the constitution of Statistical Committee. And in 1868, that led to the committee actually led to the publication of its first statistical abstract of the British India. So, the statistical abstract with the period covered was 1840 to 1865. In the year 1881, the first synchronous decennial population census was conducted. So, the word synchronous matters the systematic record of the population which can be compared with other decennial population census in India. So, therefore, this timeline is very important. Since then, every year, every 10 years, Indian government is conducting population census. So, counting the total record of the population till the latest population census was in the year 2011. Now, in 1914, the Directorate of Statistics came into being. Later, that was transformed into Directorate of Commercial Intelligence and Statistics in 1925 after merging of the Directorate of Statistics and the Commercial Intelligence Department. So, in 1925, the Economic Enquiry Committee was set up that recommended the establishment of Central Statistical Bureau, and especially in the year 1939 the wholesale price index collection was made and the calculation for it actually began. In 1949 the famous statistician in our country, none other than P.C. Mahalanobis, was appointed as the first statistical advisor to that particular cabinet of Government of India, and establishment of central statistical unit CSU, which later converted to CSO, Central Statistical Organization, in the year 1951. I think CSO is very famous so far as Indian accounting of national income is concerned, and that is in fact the most authentic source of data understanding national income of the country. In 1950, at the instance of the then Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, a large scale sample survey agency was known as actually called NSS. So, NSS actually came into existence especially from the year 1950. Now, understanding the nature of NSS data. So, NSS surveys are broadly classified in three parts. So far, if you look at all rounds in the history of NSS, they are broadly classified into three. They are majorly of three. There are others also, but threes are covering household, enterprises and other survey. A subject usually repeated in 5 years. Each subject time series data can be actually produced, since these are actually repeated over 5 years. So, time series we are referring to the occurrence of certain particular issue over time, over different periods. In some cases it is 5 years, in some cases it is 10 years. So, we will discuss that, and this is the source. The web link is given here. The web link is mustbe.nic.in. You can click on this website. You will be directed towards the exact source of data where you can understand further details. We will have also, let me also mention in between that we will have in every week we will add question papers for your practice. We will also give you some interaction module with STATA, where it will be very useful for your work. But at this moment let me clarify the different forms of data. You must be quite familiar with those data to start with with using STATA. Now, as I just said, there are broadly three types: household, enterprise and other surveys. Household surveys cover employment, unemployment, consumer expenditure, health related information, education, land holdings, debt and investment. Whereas the enterprise survey over different period of time in a regular basis that covers organized, unorganized manufacturing, unorganized services, unorganized trade, and in other survey it majorly covers slums, village facilities and particulars related to constructions. Now, if you check the schedules of the survey, schedules we generally refer to the questionnaire. Schedules of the survey, we find there are different time period of its survey. There are frequency of its time period also, like there are some 10-year cycle. 10-year cycle, if you count by 10-year cycle, in the 10-year cycle there are some double occurrence, there are one single occurrence also. So, what I wanted to mention here, that in the 10-year cycle consumer expenditure and or employment and unemployment surveys were conducted in India. Now, in a 10-year cycle it occurs twice. So, 2 times survey done in Indian context in every 10-year cycle. That means roughly around every 5 years you will have one round for consumer expenditure related information and employment or unemployment related information. Similarly, for social consumption, which includes health and education, also have twice in a 10-year cycle. So, these are very important for you to note, because you may have some quiz related questions on these. Occurrence in twice or once or thrice, we may make you a little confused also. So, there is no question of thrice in 10-year cycle. Also mark the line in between that we are referring to a 10-year cycle. If we read twice means 5 years each for a round. Okay. Now, land and if you look at enterprise survey, it is also twice. Now, in the context of land and livestock holdings, it is not twice, it is once in 10 years. And there are also some open rounds, some special surveys are also conducted. So, special survey we will discuss actually in our due course of time, that there are annual consumer expenditure rounds, similarly some annual rounds for employment and unemployment surveys. These are generally called thin rounds. Thin rounds usually cover less sample. Okay. And so, there is no such cycle mentioned when we talk about open rounds, but still in some specific open round there are cycles. Okay. Since it is 1 year, so 1 year cycle you may consider, but actually it is not repeated every time. So, there is no such clear cycle defined, but in the big thick sample we have clarity related to sample related to cycle. Now, as a further glossary to the explanation made, let us clarify what do you mean by rounds, what do you mean by sub rounds, schedules and schedule file. Without these it is very difficult to understand NSS or even any other data. In our next class it will be of ISDS data, India's Human Development Survey data, and I am deliberately mentioning this name in order to have your interest for data, unit level data, those who want to work for development related issues, purely Indian based development issues as a comparison to the world or for the developing country, especially for the developing countries context. These surveys are very important. Now, how to explore, mine those data sets? These are not that easy unless you read between the lines. So, rounds, sub rounds, schedules and schedule file are important. Let me clarify each of the concept. So, rounds actually we mean here or as per the NSS is that each survey extends over a period of few months or a year, which is termed actually as a round. Okay. If the survey started, if it continues for few months or a year, to complete that survey is simply called a round. Whereas, if you check the sub rounds, the survey period of 1 year actually classified or divided into different parts, maybe 4 or 6 equal sub periods to capture the seasonal patterns. Likewise, if you check the PLFS recent data, periodic labor force data, there are a number of debates you might have checked in the newspaper related to unemployment situation in India. So, even the database was now released. I am just mentioning because of its interest, because of its importance in the news. So, periodic labor force survey finally released in last year. But referring to the period 1917-18, which has included sub rounds, like the survey actually divided into 4 quarters. So, 4 quarters especially for the urban areas. They considered 4 quarters for rural as well as for urban, but in rural the persons are different. Okay. Where in the urban the persons are same, it is repeated. Okay. It is repeated. And whereas in case of schedules, item on which information is required is very important and contained in the schedule number. So, I will explain what you mean by schedule. Sometimes it is written as 10.2, what do you mean by 10.2 can be clarified very clearly. And now last one is called schedule file. Schedule file basically the survey questionnaire we are referring to. Each schedule has given a name and number. The number has an integer part and a decimal part. So, this is mentioned, and the integer part denotes series, broad subject group is mentioned, and the decimal part denotes the enquiry properly or the proper enquiry of that particular part. Especially if you refer to the 7th round of the NSS, which is on unorganized enterprises, a schedule number. So, we start with the schedule, now we are actually referring to the exact schedule file. So, schedule number if it is of 2.34, where 2 stands for surveys on enterprises, whereas the 0.34 or 2.34 stands for survey on the particular unincorporated non-agricultural enterprises. Now, let us clarify what do you mean by thick round and thin rounds? Thick rounds are the major data collection rounds, repeated, as I mentioned already, repeated in every 5 years. Usually it is actually called quinquennial rounds, whereas in case of thin rounds, minor data collection rounds. Sometimes those are also called annual rounds, okay. Even a special rounds are called thin rounds, because the coverage is either less, or the I mean coverage in terms of sample number might be less, or the number of issues covered might be also limited as compared to the thick round. So, another clarification is very important in order to understand the data which are given in notepad file, usually in NSS. To start with, this is called fixed width file. What do you mean by fixed width file? The data files the data files which are generally in text format, specified by fixed column width. The total column width will show it in our example. It includes pad characters also, and it includes left or right alignment also. Okay. So, this file will not have any line for variable names. There should not be any specific line. These are mentioned continuously, including all those aspects, column width, pad characters, and as well as alignments. Basically, the raw data file actually is in text format, so far as fixed width file is concerned. Another file is required called layout file. Now I am just taking the name of it, we will show it in the exact data set. So, layout file gives the description of organization of the variables, how variables are actually organized. Now, in the thick round, as I mentioned, it is called quinquennial survey, consumer expenditure, employment, unemployment, debt and investment, enterprises. Whereas in case of thin round, it is on expenditure in education, particulars of slum and housing condition, morbidity and healthcare, situation assessment of farmers, land and livestock holding. And important uses of NSS survey, where we can use this survey for our analysis. We can use for poverty estimation, we can use for understanding or estimating employment, or in its projection also, because we have a time component as well over so many years for this survey. So, there are possibility of projection for another 5 years or 10 years ahead. National income estimation, estimation of literacy rates, estimation of disability as well. Why we do it and why we do need it? Because of some kind of policy framework for future generation or future context. Now, what are the sampling frame for NSS survey? What kind of sampling frame used? This is very important. If you go through the report of NSS, probably it is too difficult to read between the line, because there are so many information given. So, we tried our best to simplify it by collating various information from various sources. For rural sample, start with the sampling frame of NSS. For the rural sample, the list 2011 population census villages were taken as sampling frame. So, we take the base as population census as the sampling frame, whereas for the urban sample we considered urban frame survey, that is UFS blocks. I have already discussed this in our last lecture, UFS, how this is considered urban frame survey. UFS blocks are considered as a sample frame. UFS is actually conducted on a continuing basis to provide an updated frame of first stage units. I think in the last lecture we discussed first stage, second stage and third stage. So, broader categories to smaller category, again to the further smaller category. Usually at the third stage we discuss the unit, that is individual, where in the second stage it is the household or the family. Okay. So, accordingly we define, maybe our first stage will be the rural areas. Okay. And UFS is conducted on a continuing basis, as I just said, to provide an updated frame of the first stage units and also in newly framed towns. Okay. So, each town, let me have a clarification on it. Each town and city is divided into compact aerial UFS blocks by area, but how these areas are defined and how these are actually classified. It depends on between town and city. There are a population, the boundaries are defined by their population content of 600 to 800 if it is a town, and 120 to 180 household if it is a city. If these are the benchmark, based on these benchmark or limit, city or towns are defined and the FSU are actually defined. Basically UFS blocks are defined based on these limits. So, different blocks based on 600 to 800 population one block, or it is 120 to 180 if it is a city as of household as another block. Okay. So, similarly for enterprise survey, so what could have been included? It is of course not the household, it should be the unit as the enterprise. Okay. And but the enterprise survey is actually based on the census. Likewise, this is based on a census. So, enterprise is also based on an economic census, not population census. Economic census considers all possible enterprises in our country. Okay. So, data is used. So far we have the latest economic census is called 6th economic census in 2013 and 14. So, data is used for selecting villages, and this is used for selecting our sampling base for villages as well as for UFS blocks. Now, these are some of the recent NSS rounds conducted in India. We are recent rounds, we are not discussing the previous round. You can go through that website and track all previous rounds. So, from 70th round, that is 2013 January to December round, it covers situational assessment survey of agricultural household. Whereas, in the 71st round, quantitative information related to health sector was given. In 72nd round, it was on household expenditure on services and durable goods. 73rd, that is 15-16 July to June, the enterprises which we were just discussing was actually covered. The title of the survey was unincorporated non-agriculture enterprises excluding construction. So, while we consider this as our base for analysis, as the data for analysis, we must be very careful which data it is not considering, what are the limitations of the data. Even while communicating research papers, we need to mention that this is the limitation of our data. Data does not cover all the enterprises, it excludes some of the enterprises, even agriculture is not covered. On looking at the 74th round of NSS that was conducted in July to June 16-17, it was on service sector enterprises. So, this is in fact the latest enterprise information available in Indian context. 75th is on consumption, social consumption, on education in India. 76th is on drinking water, sanitation, hygiene and housing condition. The most famous, most debated data set is periodic labor force. The title of the survey is not as like the earlier rounds NSS 76th or 7th, now they have actually taken the name of it. It is called periodic labor force survey, PLFS, July to June 2017-18. Let us start with using NSS data a bit, how we can use it in our STATA module. In order to use it, we need to go through the exact file. So, the file is actually, as I mentioned, is it originally given in ASCII format. Those are also called text data, and they can be imported to any software, any other software like STATA, R, Python, SPSS, etc. for analysis purpose. The data are organized in fixed width format. In NSS maintain NSS data notepad file or ASCII format is maintained with fixed width format. So, fixed width, as I already said, that it contains the column space are same and total column space are same, and it contains paired characters. The notation for the paired characters must be same, okay, throughout, and also the alignment given in the notepad file or the data must have been also same, either it will be left aligned data or right aligned throughout. We will show it in our example. So, fixed file. In the next slide I have the picture for it. So I have already said that it is specified by column width, pad characters, left and right alignments. So ASCII is basically American standard code for information interchange, most commonly used with binary encoding schemes. So these are the examples as I just said. Now look at the data extracted from a notepad file. After extraction we get certain figures. Now this is name, state name, telephone number. If for example if it is there, now these are actually given in left hand line format. Now now even look at the second one is in right hand line format. The whole data set is actually interpreted in right hand line format. Now if you try to check with the pad character is actually given with this symbol, okay. This symbol every time, either we go by space, in between space should be, instead of the symbol space may be considered, okay, or any other symbol is considered, but that should be similar throughout the data set. Now what do you mean by this? Now this is similar to the right aligned data set, but if blanks are there, these blanks are filled up with a pad character with this symbol, and this symbol must be similar everywhere. Why we are taking it? Because this is going to be very useful for our interpretation and explanation using any software, maybe STATA. So you please take a note on pad character, the meaning of pad character. To convert the unit level data provided by NSS in raw form to a usable form, we need 4 important files, as I already discussed in our last lecture, that it requires schedule file, layout file, readme file and state or district code. So schedule file contains questionnaire, survey questionnaire, layout file contains information regarding the data, how the data is organized, and the readme file gives different describes how the different data sets are organized, how they have organized actually it gives, whereas the state and district code file actually gives the code of the state and districts taken. Without those codes it is not possible to interpret the data, otherwise data remains only as data. Now we are taking the picture, snapshot from the original data from some of the extracted information from the data, and now we are presenting it for your clarity. And this is with respect to the latest PLFS, periodic labor force data set of 2017-18. It contains schedule of household characteristics, household size is given, household type, religion, social groups, and there are other information also. So let me understand a bit on how these are given in our notepad file. Okay, notepad file contains with fixed width, as I already mentioned, with pad characters and alignment. So here it is not visible, the pad character and the alignment is not visible. Once we extract, we will get to know whether that is in left or right, but after extraction it is clearly understood. But at this moment I just wanted to understand how you should read the byte position, and this byte position information are given in the layout file. Okay. So layout file, as I just said, usually given in Excel format, okay, in NSS, sometimes in PDF format also, but I have already shown you those Excel layout file in our last lecture. Go through that layout file, the samples of that layout file, and try to look at. Even this is the sample here given, small as the layout file. It contains this information. From the layout file we should know this, and byte position. Byte position is very important, and also you need to understand in which block those are considered. Now if it is, suppose I wanted to read what is the total byte position here, it is from 43 to 47. Now 43, if I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this, if we keep on counting the position, here actually the positions stands at 43, and this is our 47th position. So now in our command, in our STATA command, we are supposed to give the exact byte position for correct extraction. Okay. Suppose we wanted to extract with the household size, we have to give 43 and 44. These two are quite important for our better extraction. So, let me proceed, we will explain in our exact lecture. So, this is the raw data format, we have already said number of times. Now, the extracted format will look like this, and from here you can find out whether these are left aligned or right aligned. After extraction, it seems it is clearly a right aligned one, okay, not left aligned. And pad characters, as I just said, these are actually in blank space, everywhere blank space is somewhere mentioned, okay, but it is not visible. If you go by a particular character, you can also assign a character, but probably it is not that useful at this moment. So, we will discuss in the exact lecture. Okay. So, these are all in sum we have given you many handy information, very handy information in understanding NSS data, and with the right command, right understanding of the format, the files, you can able to extract and enjoy the data. So, thank you learners.